So we are coming now to the third speaker, which is Thulasi Muttulingam from Sri Lanka, and she's a journalist reporting on post-war issues. So Thulasi, can you say something about the situation with gender identity in your country? How did you realize that it was a threat to women and girls, and who is promoting or opposing it?
So Sri Lanka is a small country in the Indian Ocean close to India. Our ethnic makeup is mainly Sinhalese, Tamils, and Muslims. We have some other minorities as well, but it's mainly 70%, 70 odd percent Sinhalese. Used to be something like 20% Tamils, but 30 years of war, pogroms, etc. So many died, many migrated. So we are about 13% now, and about 10% Muslims. So that's the background. We are far removed from the Western world in the sense that we are not yet institutionally captured. However, there are some brackets of people absolutely taking this forward. And I think we owe J.K. Rowling national applause, like, global applause actually, because what she said burst it out into the world. In far-flung pockets, we heard about what was happening. When that whole thing happened, that whole cancellation of J.K. Rowling, I had no idea what was going on. I just saw a lot of social media activity where friends were burning their Harry Potter books, screeching about their lost childhood. And these are heteronormative people talking about how she's a transphobe and they'll never get over it. And I tried to follow up and find out what she had said that was so transphobic. And when I looked at what she had said, obviously there's nothing transphobic. So I actually reached out to these people causing a ruckus here and asked, could you tell me what exactly is the problem? And I meant it sincerely. I just wanted to learn from them. I thought they might have a point. I just wanted to know. And then got faced with this typical woke rhetoric of educate yourself. You are the problem. If you don't understand, you are a transphobe yourself. Some trans people are going to kill themselves or get murdered just because you asked this question. All these sort of things, that just a lot of accusations, no concrete answers. Or if I say, this is what she said, right, what's wrong with it? It's like, oh, she said something somewhere else. We can't be bothered to find the link, you go find it. So I did months of solid research and I couldn't find anything. But all the media sources that were writing about her were saying she was transphobic. But then if they actually quoted her, there was nothing transphobic in her quotes. And I just didn't even understand, because we have no idea about gender ideology such as it is, like what was happening here. And I should say I come from a genuinely transphobic country, as in trans people here suffer the literal form of transphobia, where they are killed, raped, thrown out of their houses, employment discrimination. We have got the whole gamut going on here. So I was obviously pro-trans rights, and I have been a pro-trans rights activist in Sri Lanka for nearly 10 years. So I was inclined to believe that this might be problematic. I wanted to know what was problematic, and I couldn't find anything in the reports. And obviously, there's a lot of word salad thrown in. When I asked activists what the problem was, a lot of jargon, a lot of big words. And English is not my first language, but I am an English teacher. I do have a fairly good command of the language. I just couldn't make any sense of these word salad. And I used to send it out to friends of mine who are by now senior editors in the media industry. And I would ask them, can you make sense of it? What does this mean? And they also took the line, it seems profound, maybe we just don't get it yet. And Judith Butler, someone sent me Judith Butler text, and I spent about 2 weeks trying to figure that out. It took a long time to figure out, there's no sense to this. They just really took us out, but I finally figured it out. And I think what happened was that they have this thing about turf, I heard it too. So then I went on Twitter and just to search for turfs. And that's when the GC feminists came up, and I started following them. And then it started making sense. Okay, this is what's happening. And it was quite a massive shock. So Sri Lanka right now, we have just the typical woke crowd who are pushing this, which is a minority elite brat pack. However, because they come from elite families, They are mostly millennials in mid-managerial positions in the government and non-government sector. They have said that they are pushing this ideology forward as a progressive policies. We don't know that the government has actually taken it on board. And some friends of mine were telling me that I should stop it because as far as I know, I'm the only openly gender critical feminist in Sri Lanka right now. And so there is a huge backlash. I am called this transphobe turf. And even my friends are concerned that since it is a genuinely transphobic country, the vulnerable trans people might get caught in the backlash. So I was told to tone it down, and their justification is, look, the government is not progressive anyway, so they will never bring this ideology in here. But my answer to that is that this is not a progressive ideology. It's a regressive misogynistic ideology. And we have a regressive misogynistic government. As soon as they figure out how easy it is, we are going to be in trouble. And we need to wake up to that.
What affects women's lives in general in your country? Where does your government stand in terms of women's rights?
Extremely misogynistic, as I said. So we have one of the lowest political representations in South Asia. So neighboring countries, Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, they all have Afghanistan. They all have double digits, at least 10 to 30% representation of women politicians. We have 5%. And every time we campaign for more representation, the government's one trump card is Mrs. Sirimavo Bandaranaike. In 1960, she was the first female prime minister elected in the modern world. And they still bring that up to tell us, we were way ahead of the West in bringing in a female premier. What are you talking about? We don't need to do anything else. So there are a lot of women's issues. We had a long drawn out civil war. Men died or migrated. So the women are now about, officially on statistics, they are saying 52% of the population. I think where I am, which is much more war affected, my gauging is around 60% of the population. And the women are left to be the breadwinners as well as caretakers of home. They have the double load on them. And there's no infrastructure development, policy development to address this, that they had not traditionally been brought up to be the breadwinners. It's a very patriarchal country culture where they were supposed to stay at home and take care of the family and kids and cook and clean all day. Now they had to go out to work and do all this at home. One of the main things the women ask for, they ask for simple things. They ask for daycare centers to leave their children while they go to work. That has yet to materialize, and we are 12 years past the end of the war now. So even simple things that women ask for, no one takes any heed of it. And we asked for political representation, campaigned for a long time. Only about 2 years ago, they brought in 25% representation in local elections, not the national elections. And even that was at the final level. They didn't allow many of the strong women candidates to go in. They just filled it with their mothers and sisters and girlfriends. And those women are obviously puppets. Like I have tried to interview them as a journalist. It's like, oh, my husband said, why don't you join? So I joined. I have no idea. They are openly saying that. And then that is also used against us, that these women are seen as weak. They are not actually, when they don't actually know about any policies. So when that gets out among the people, the argument is, see, women don't know anything, so why did you even campaign for it? However, nationally, the three main industries that are keeping Sri Lanka afloat, our number three, first, second, and third industries, the garment sector. So worldwide brands have factories in Sri Lanka to make clothing, but the women are paid an absolute pittance. Then tea industry. Sri Lanka is famous for its tea, and the tea pluckers are mainly women. Foreign remittances, again, mostly from women who are going to the Middle East as domestic workers. So these three are the main industries that Sri Lanka is economically dependent on. The government acknowledges that. But all three industries are hugely exploitative of women. They pay around $100 to $200 per month for round the clock. It's not a 9-to-5 job. A domestic worker in Saudi Arabia, for example, will get 2 hours of sleep. That's it. And for that, she manages to send $200 per month home. Tea pluckers have been campaigning for something like $10 a day. No, sorry, $5 a day. And these have been going on for years and yet to materialize. The government keeps saying, oh yeah, we'll give it, we have gazetted it, we have done this, we have done that. So because when the media follows up, the argument is we are doing something. But 3 or 4 years down the line, the salary is still very, very poor. Again, garment factories are a whole other boat of exploitation and low pay. So all these things that directly affect women are not even looked into. Just about 5 years ago, we had a male minister in charge of women and children's affairs. So we had hundreds of ministries. As being a small country, we don't need that many ministries. But the government at the time was trying to consolidate power by keeping male politicians satisfied by giving them various portfolios. And obviously male-dominated cabinet. But at least at one ministry for women and children, couldn't it have been a woman minister? And when that question was put to him, his answer was, well, women are not really tolerant of other women. They will fight and, they are jealous of each other. They will not serve each other's best interests. So it's best to have a male at the top. My deputy can be a woman, and I know best what's for, I can do what's best for women. And that kind of thing we had as recently as 5 years ago. So misogyny is it's not even underground. It's like open and bubbling up.
Are you part of a feminist organization? What are you working on now? And tell us about other women's rights or LGBT groups working specifically to support women and girls in your country. What work are they doing?
Right. So homosexuality is still illegal in the country as per the statute books. We are still operating on, we were once colonized by first the Portuguese, then the Dutch, then the British. So we have Roman Dutch law and British law on paper still. And so a law left behind by the British 200 years ago, criminalizing homosexuality, is still there in the books. And every time campaigns reach out to remove it, there's a backlash from the clergy or some segments of the population, and they keep it. What they are saying though is that what the governments have said is that in recent years have said is that it can't be used to jail people, but still it's there in the books. And LGBT people are mostly underground because the culture is also heavily and homophobic. That's one. But there are LGBT organizations, LGBT organizations as well. And what I am active in, I'm a professional journalist, so I had to subscribe to this notion that you couldn't be an activist at the same time. That's what we are trained as a journalist, you can't be an activist. But over time, I realized the women's rights situation was so bad in the country. I am part of women's rights groups, and I am openly a feminist and a women's rights activist, for which reason some male readers reach out to say, if you ever write on women's rights, and I'm one of the few women writers exclusively concentrating on writing women's issues and bringing it out, because otherwise it doesn't get covered at all. And they reach out and tell me, I wouldn't trust anything you write because you are so obviously biased. And so that's how women's rights gets covered in the country. I used to be a mainstream reporter working for national newspapers. If at all we had a women's section in the newspaper, it would be a male editor calling the shots on what to put in there. So the women readers were never asked, what do you want to read? The women journalists were never asked, what do you want to cover? And usually it would be just some very silly thing like go and interview that actress on her beauty routine. So many burning women's issues in the country, and the national press doesn't have time for it. And the covers of these sections, I remember working on a desk where we managed to sneak in various articles that were of interest to women, and women were reading it. But then they complained because the cover would be of a half-naked model in a risk poses. And this is a culturally conservative country. So women readers were complaining, look, this is supposed to be a family paper. I'm embarrassed to have this paper in front of my children. What's with that cover? And we reported to the editor, it's a women's section. Women are complaining about the cover, but it's like, they don't even take that on board. The feedback is not taken on board. We decide, and that cover is typically geared for a male gaze, and it's a women's section. So I am part of a network called Women's Action Network in Sri Lanka. So we have branches all around the country, and I am in part of the Jaffna branch. So though men make a lot of jokes about women not being able to get together, they actually should take a leaf from from how women actually network, because this is a deeply racially divided country due to the civil war and politicization. But across this ethnic and highly politicized divide, the women reach out to each other. So there are Sinhalese mothers whose sons were in the army and disappeared, networking with Tamil mothers whose sons were in the guerrilla outfit, Tamil guerrilla outfit called LTT, and they disappeared. So because they understand these were warring factions, and these are mothers of the warring factions, but they have a good network and solidarity with each other because they understand each other as women. And so women fight for different things in the hill country, which is Kandy, where they might be fighting for the tea pluckers' rights. Over in Jaffna, they might be fighting for various issues related to post-war issues that the women are facing. But every time a solidarity action network is needed, women travel all over the country, show up for each other, and picket and protest for each other. And yeah, it's really lovely to see.